Hello, Mr. Harris and fellow students. My designer is Gilbert Adrian, the American designer. Adrian's first public triumph as an artist and designer came at the age of 5, soon after he started kindergarten. Alone in the empty classroom one afternoon, he picked up some colored chalk and began drawing. An ornate calliope was the first object to appear, surrounded by color, notes, in a mist stream. His parents ran a millinery business. His mother was an artist. His uncle was a theatrical designer. They were Jewish immigrants, Gilbert and Helena Adrian. Born Adrian Adolph Greenberg in Naugatuck, Connecticut, March 3, 1903, used the single name Adrian from 1921, then borrowed his father's given name, Gilbert, in 1922. He attended Naugatuck High School and graduated with honors. He attended Parsons Schools of Fine Arts and Applied Arts, now Parsons School of Design, in New York in 1921, and Paris branch in 1922. Although openly gay, in 1939, Adrian entered into a lavender marriage. He married the actress Janet Gaynor. They had a son, Robin. Janet was the lover of Mary Martin in response to the anti-gay attitudes of movie studio heads, particularly Louis B. Mayer, who ran MGM Studios. In Paris, Adrian led a very flamboyant existence and hung out with Erté and his group. Irving Berlin discovered him there and took Greenberg back to New York, where Berlin gave him a job designing for the Broadway hit Music Box Revue in 1923. After gaining success with Berlin's shows, Adrian decided to try Hollywood. He changed his name to the much more exotic Adrian, an obvious influence of Erté, and was hired by Natasha Rombova. Replacing previous designer Norman Norell, he was to help revive the rapidly disintegrating career of then-husband Rudolph Valentino. It did not work. Adrian's first 2 films were Valentino's last. Adrian was hired as production designer for the formidable Cecil B. DeMille from 1926 to 28. He was hired as the chief costume designer for MGM, where he became an asset as important as any star. Once Gilbert began working for MGM Studios, he became successful in transforming the studio's wardrobe department into a virtual one-man operation, becoming one of the first and certainly one of the most highly publicized of Hollywood hybrid, known as the costume designer couturier. In the 1930s, millions of women filled the Baroque movie palaces to see his newest designs. His designs were characterized by bold silhouettes and patterns, dolman and kimono sleeves, long tapering waistlines, and diagonal fastenings. He favored asymmetric lines and frequently used black crepe for slim, bias-cut evening gowns. He created pure magic with his innovative, luxurious, and cleverly flamboyant garments. He extended his magic when he offered a ready-to-wear line under his own label. Mr. Adrian was inspired by historical clothing and decorations. He practiced his craft from 1928 to 1942 at MGM. His lavish fabrics and attention to minute details was never more obvious than when he worked with Greta Garbo, whom he dressed for a number of historical films. Known for his impeccable styling, Adrian influenced the history of fashion with his camera-tailored costumes that set cinematic precedents. Also to his credit, a potent iconography of American mythology that lingers even today. He's also credited to have created 1,200 costumes, 5,000 wigs, and designed for the sets and entire cast of over 250 movie productions. During his tenure at MGM from 1928 to 41, He worked with some of the biggest female stars of the day like Greta Garbo, Norma Shearer, Jeanette MacDonald, Jean Harlow, Katharine Hepburn, Audrey Hepburn, and Joan Crawford. He was the head designer at MGM and created innovative contemporary fashions and interpretations of period costume for stores. He created padded shoulders and did designs for the women in the movie The Women. Garbo is known for the soft trench coat and Joan Crawford for her broad, defined shoulders. His images for stars remain indelible even today. He collaborated with Joan Crawford 28 times, Norma Shearer 18 times, Jean Harlow 9 times, and Greta Garbo over the course of her career. Adrian was behind Crawford's signature outfits with large shoulder pads, which later spawned a fashion trend. Gilbert was equally comfortable with period films capturing the essence of any era. He is one of the leading exponents of the quintessential 30s bias cut, a trickery technique that cut all panels of a dress at a 45-degree angle to the warp and weft of its fabric instead of cutting straight along the grain. The result was a costume that draped and clung to every curve of stars like Jean Harlow, whose appeal and career owes much to the designer. Adrian makes generous uses of asymmetry and diagonals. His use of diagonals was his alone. He created V-shaped details over the bosom of a costume, with the tops of the V at the shoulders and the bottom of the V coming together at the waistlines, and giving actresses an illusion of far narrower waistlines than they actually had. Film designers in Hollywood produced clothes that rivaled those of French couturiers in quality, expense, glamour, and which had enormous influence on the public. Adrian, in particular, began his career in the garment district of New York and then progressed to Hollywood, where he worked for MGM and created the immortal 1930s silver screen look. A new genre of American dressmakers or stylists emerged, which names became synonymous with MGM, Warner Brothers, and Universal Studios. These designers also did some work for the wholesale trade in America. In 1932, Adrian's most successful white organza dress with ruffled shoulders sold 500,000 copies in Macy's New York department store. Just as the early immigrants discarded their traditional clothing as soon as they embarked so they could symbolically start a new life by discarding their previous identities, movie producers used this same technique of changing costumes to reflect the changed circumstances or characterizations of the heroes or heroines in their films. Dorothy's red slippers in The Wizard of Oz were made of sequins. They were sewn into silk georgette and glued and stitched to file pumps he designed with focus, paying great attention to details. The costume for the Wicked Witch of the West has been the definitive witch's costume at Halloween since 1939. Adrian's influence on current and future generations of designers continues throughout movies and in recent years throughout a series of museums and expeditions, notably Adrian, the Couture Years, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art in 1995, and the Artistry Adrian, Hollywood's celebrated design innovators at the Kent State University. Adrian, American Glamour at the Costume Institute of Metropolitan Museum 2002, Art, both in 2002. He is credited with the creation of forceful talent who transformed the image of the ideal woman on screen, the man who brought the naive ingenue into modern era as a self-reliant woman in a strong, square-shouldered silhouette that is still the standard for the female form today. He went on to dress all women across America. He maintained close and long relationships with Garbo and Crawford. Yet, there was more. The knockout gowns for the blonde bombshell Jean Harlow, the ever-changing costumes for the First Lady of MGM, Norma Shearer, and the frothy prettiness for singing sweetheart Jeanette MacDonald. The gowns for screen idols Greer Garson, Hedy Lamarr, Katharine Hepburn, Judy Garland, Lana Turner, Rosalind Russell, Janet Gaynor, and many other stars. He continued to work closely with Hollywood. In 1942, because of the impact Adrian had on the fashion industry, the costumes for film were often translated into the garments sold through retailers that he was voted one of the top 3 designers by 1,000 buyers in the United States in 1940. He opened his own salon located in Beverly Hills, which was instant success and produced clothing based on many of the ideas he popularized in film. Adrian was awarded in 1944 for his inventive, ready-to-wear designs. After retiring from film, his couture and ready-to-wear business was highly successful. His designs were manufactured and sold to specialty stores here in the United States. He showed his first collection in February 1942. His designs include the classic square shoulder 1940 suit, for which he is well known. Adrian squared the shoulder with pads of his own, narrowing, framing the silhouette to give it a classic line. His collection also included a wide variety of dresses, cocktail and evening wear, and coats. In 1947, Adrian refused to follow the examples of Paris when the new look was introduced by Christian Dior. Although he never significantly varied the V cut of his suits, he reduced the shoulder pads, never removing them altogether, and lengthened and slimmed the skirt. Some of his designs were evening collections, including everything from voluptuous ball gowns to modifications on the sari to dinner dresses draped with bustle variations. In 1952, Adrian suffered a heart attack that forced him to close his business. Adrian died in Los Angeles due to unknown complications. He had begun sketching and processing costumes and clothing for the musical Camelot. And this is the end of my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. It was very informative to me. I now know that I have another designer to be mentored from. And I found out that everything he did has been reiterated in styles today. Thank you.